Hi guys, happy Wednesday. Alicia Cross with Alicia Cross Training here, and I am coming at you live on Wednesday as I have been doing. It is a little bit later today and I didn't announce it ahead of time. So if you are here or if you are catching the live video, thanks for being here. Say hi in the comments so I know that you're here. And if you are watching the replay live anytime, thank you. Thank you for watching. And you can post a comment or a question anytime and I will respond. So welcome. So today we're talking about the science and the magic of breathing. So I am gonna nerd out a little bit on the science of breathing, and I hope that you enjoy it and you learn something from it and you get a greater appreciation and understanding of the breath. So I'll tie it back into yoga and exercise and really how it can benefit you in your daily life. And what I want to start you off with is this to think about. You can survive for 3 weeks without food, 1 week without water, but only 3 minutes without oxygen. So as you're on your journey to get healthier and more fit, of course, a lot of the questions are nutrition based. You know, you want to know how many calories you should eat, when you should eat, what you should eat, and these are all good questions, and we talk about that. I also talk to you a ton about water, about drinking enough water. But the truth is, if you're not breathing properly, that is going to have a ripple effect out into your overall health, your mood, your well-being. Because this is maybe hard to believe or hard to understand, but most of you don't breathe correctly. So we'll talk about that and how to fix that. I did a workshop on pranayama a few weeks ago where we talked about the science of the breath and we practiced some different pranayama techniques. And one of my students, she summed it up great. She said, the breath is the thing. And it really is. If you are in yoga and you think that the poses are the thing, it's not the thing. I'll let you in on a secret. That is not the thing. The breath is the thing. So the breath practice can absolutely happen, can and should happen in the yoga practice, but the breath practice can also be separate on its own. So let's talk a little bit about the science of breathing. Okay, so there are 2 reasons for breathing: pH regulation and gas exchange. So, you know, our body has a pH that it likes to be at, whether you're too acidic or too alkaline, not good. So part of that homeostasis is keeping your body in that ideal pH. And gas exchange, so taking in oxygen and exhaling out waste products like carbon dioxide. The breath is regulated by the brainstem. So it's the part of the brain that regulates things that help you to survive, things that you don't need to think about all day long, like your blood pressure, your heart rate, and some other things in the body. And what is really cool about the breath is that the breath is part of these involuntary systems that keep you alive, like blood pressure and heart rate. You don't have to think about them. But what's different is that the breath is also voluntary. You can control the breath. So you can't right now slow down your blood pressure or your heart rate, but you can slow down your breath, which will thereby slow down your blood pressure and your heart rate. So the breath is the way that we get to these things that we can't automatically control. So your nervous system is, remember, 2 halves. It's the autonomic, which is involuntary, and the voluntary, and the breath lives in both of those. And then the autonomic or the involuntary nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And so in yoga, we're always trying to get us into parasympathetic, the opposite of fight or flight. And that is controlled by the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic controlled by the vagus nerve. And vagus means the wanderer. And this nerve is called the vagus nerve because while it's a cranial nerve, it reaches all the way down into your digestive system. So that's why it's called the wanderer. The vagus nerve stimulates your GI, your respiration, your heart, and your abdominal organs. So there is 2 parts to the vagus nerve. I told you we're going to nerd out a little bit on the science. But this is important. So 2 parts of the vagus nerve. So you have the old part and the new part that only exists in mammals. And that is the polyvagal theory. And this is still new. This is not that old. It's really, to me, it's really kind of cool that science is kind of more and more backing up what is already existing in the ancient teachings, right? They taught breath. That was absolutely a pillar of the teachings, and science is kind of just filling in the blanks and telling us like how that works in the body. And anything that kind of merges the science and the woo-woo, I'm all about. And for me, breath is just the pinnacle of that. Because like I said in the title, it's the science and the magic of breathing. So there is science behind it, absolutely. But then something magical does happen in our lives and in our health when we can understand this. So the polyvagal theory, you have the old and the new, which only exists in mammals. The new that only exists in mammals will override the old. So we need to use our higher cognitive brain to activate that vagus nerve that is part of the parasympathetic nervous system to calm down fight or flight. Okay, so how do we do that? By breathing deeply. So breathing slowly, deeply, and lengthening out the exhalations stimulates that vagus nerve, which shifts us into parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, which is where we want to be. That also stimulates more GABA, which is a neurotransmitter, and that is the primary inhibitor of that fight or flight response. And when you have high GABA, you have low anxiety. High GABA, low anxiety. So slow, deep breathing, longer exhalations activates that vagus nerve that shifts you into rest and digest or rest and restore, the parasympathetic nervous system, and increases GABA. And what ladies listening, men with ladies in your life, GABA is lowest at the luteal phase of your menstrual cycle, so the second half of your menstrual cycle. GABA is low, which means you don't have that inhibition of the parasympathetic nervous system, and you could have higher anxiety. So I'm probably not telling you anything new, but maybe that helps you to understand why in the second half of your menstrual cycle, you feel emotionally different. And hopefully this also prompts you to prioritize your yoga practice in the second half of your menstrual cycle. And men, for the women in your life, help them out. Help them to prioritize their yoga practice and their self-care in the second half of their cycle, because everybody's going to be happier. So we need more of that vagal stimulation, that GABA response in the second half of the menstrual cycle. Okay, let's come back to gas exchange and pH regulation. Okay, so we breathe in and out through the nose. So when we breathe through the nose, we are able to warm, humidify, and filter the air. So filter particles out of the air. So the cilia in our pathway and the mucus in that pathway is what helps to filter out some of the particles when we breathe. So that is our part of our immune system, our protecting us from pollution that's in the air. The air also needs to be warm to 98.6 degrees, and there are structures in the nose that make that happen. And the humidity of the air needs to be 100%, so you can have that gas exchange in the alveoli. So the mouth is a less efficient way to do this because you don't get that process of warming, humidifying, and filtering the air as efficiently. Also, when you exhale out through the nose, the air passes over structures which collect back the excess moisture, so that your body has the moisture and then you're able to moisturize the next breath that's coming in. And you can see this in the winter when it's cold outside. If you breathe out through your mouth, you can see your breath. When you breathe out through your nose, you can't see it because the moisture is not still remaining in the air when you breathe it out through the nose. Also, if you're going to clean your glasses, you're going to fog your glasses, you breathe out through your mouth because that fog is the condensation on your glasses. So you lose moisture when you're breathing out through the mouth. So when you're sick, or if you just have kind of chronic sinus issues, you have to breathe out through the mouth because you can't breathe out through your nose, but that's just compounding the problem because you can't filter the air, you can't get the particles and the germs out of the air that you're breathing in, and you're losing the moisture through your mouth. You're drying out, your sinuses even more. So it's really, really important that if you do have, breathing issues and sinus issues, that you work on breathing through the nose. And it is a practice; it doesn't just happen. But if you keep relying on the mouth breathing, it's just going to compound the issues. So that's one of the huge reasons that we breathe in and out through the nose. The diaphragm is your main muscle of respiration, and that sits up under the ribs like a mushroom cap. So when that muscle is activated, it pulls down and makes a vacuum, and that pulls the air in. The exhalation is passive. The diaphragm is just relaxing, and the muscles, the thoracic cavity recoils, and the breath just effortlessly is released to an exhalation. There are accessory muscles of respiration that kick in when we are, say for example, exercising. And those muscles are in the neck and the chest. And what those muscles do is they lift the chest to pull more air in. And then to get a forceful exhalation, there's some intercostal muscles that pull the ribs down and your abdominal muscles that squeeze the air out. So that is on a forceful breath, which happens, say, when we exercise, for example. So what can happen if we are not breathing correctly, which I talked about, many of you aren't, you're going to rely heavily on these muscles to breathe. So you're going to be constantly yanking up the chest to pull in air, and you can see how it flexes all these muscles in the neck. So when I forcefully breathe in with these muscles, it's engaging here. So that is also called paradoxal breathing, because when you breathe in like that, your belly goes in. And that's not what we want. When we breathe in, the diaphragm goes down and out. The belly expands. And that's why we talk about belly breathing in yoga. So that's going to lead to, one, a lot of physical issues, because these muscles aren't built to yank up your rib cage. I don't even know how many times a day you breathe, but they're not meant to do that. So that's going to cause a lot of pain and tension in your neck, your back, your shoulders. But that is also going to go back to the vagus nerve. That is not stimulating the vagus nerve. That is instead switching you over to fight or flight. You are living in that state of anxiety. And you know that. You probably feel very stressed out, very unhappy. You can't sleep at night. You don't know why. Come back to the basics of breathing and practice that belly breath. That needs to be a deliberate practice, time on the yoga mat or on your meditation cushion, where you are practicing breathing so that it becomes a habit. So all day long, you're breathing correctly without relying on these neck muscles to do the work for you. So once you breathe the air in, that's called ventilation. And then respiration is something that happens on the cellular level. So to get the air into the cells, your alveoli, the air sacs in your lungs, they are doing the gas exchange, taking the oxygen, letting go of the toxins, carbon dioxide. And remember, they are slick surfaces, so the air needs to be humidified for that diffusion to happen. And here is a couple fun facts. So adults have 270 to 790 million alveoli. If you stretched out that membrane, it would be the size of a tennis court, nearly 50 times larger than the area of your skin. So that is the surface that absorbs the oxygen and lets go of the carbon dioxide. The size of a tennis court packed into your lungs, and it's denser at the bottom, which is another reason why we need to breathe way down into the lungs and not up here in the chest, because there's not as much alveoli up here in the upper chest. So what prompts us to breathe is the accumulation of CO2. So when you start exercising or just doing anything where you're getting more physical, your muscles are giving off more CO2. So remember, we talked about one of the purposes of breathing is pH regulation. So the buildup of CO2, your body doesn't like that, so it prompts you to breathe deeper. And that's why you start breathing deeper through exercise. That is also why we need to breathe out through the mouth when we exercise, to release that buildup of carbon dioxide. So here's where I want to mention the Bohr effect. So lower pH from increased CO2 facilitates a greater release of oxygen from the hemoglobin in your blood into your tissue, into your cells. So pH goes down because carbon dioxide goes up, and then the Bohr effect says that more oxygen goes into your tissues. And here's where I want to talk about breathing out through your mouth in, say, a yoga class, or if you're listening to a guided meditation and they're cueing you to breathe out through your mouth. If you're breathing out through your mouth, so you're forcefully exhaling out the air, but you're not working, you mess up that balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So now you've gotten rid of too much CO2. You weren't building any up, but you were blowing it all out. That stops your body from absorbing oxygen. Low carbon dioxide levels also will lead to narrowing of the blood vessels that supply blood to the brain. That can cause symptoms like lightheadedness and tingling in the fingers. This is called hyperventilation or overbreathing. So overbreathing, meaning you are breathing way too much for the activity you are doing. If you are meditating and doing yoga, you should not be breathing out through the mouth. That is a breath practice. That is a breath for exercise. And a good example of this that you might have experienced this yourself, or I've seen this a lot. I taught Pilates for years, and when I learned Pilates, we were taught a forceful exhalation. So there's a lot of things that Joseph Pilates did that we don't do anymore. But when I taught it years ago, we were taught that forceful exhalation. Many new people said they got dizzy, and I didn't know why, but I told them just stop doing Pilates breath. And this was why. They were letting go of too much carbon dioxide when they didn't need to, and they were getting lightheaded. So breathing, your breath needs to match the activity that you're doing. So yoga, meditation, breathe in and out through the nose so that you do not upset that balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so when we breathe correctly, we are able to protect our health, we are able to improve our mood, and we are able to keep all of the systems working in the body as they should. So if we are not doing those things, our health could suffer, our mood could suffer, and systems in the body can start to break down. So I encourage you to take a few minutes every day for your breath practice. That might happen in your yoga practice, in a yoga class, or maybe on your own. Pranayama, or breath practice, is the gateway to meditation. So if you are interested in starting a meditation practice, start with a breath practice. The easiest way to begin is to lie on your back and place your hands on your belly and feel that your belly is rising up to the ceiling with every inhalation and then falling back down to the mat on every exhalation. You can even place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and notice that the belly is moving rather than the chest. Once you feel like you've mastered it lying down, then try doing it seated. Same thing. Chest should remain still, belly should expand and recoil. Expand with the inhalations, recoil with the exhalations. I would also encourage you to use this anytime you are feeling stressed. If you are in a heated conversation, you're stuck in traffic, you're in a meeting, you're in any kind of tense situation, stop and notice, what is my breath doing? Where is it? How am I breathing? And work on switching it back to belly breathing. I encourage you to always breathe in and out through the nose unless you're exercising. And then you gotta release that CO2, and that's where you need to breathe out through the mouth. And remember that yoga is not a workout. Yoga is to strengthen your parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. It's completely the opposite of where you want to be when you're exercising. So if you have any questions about the breath or any of the science behind breathing or the magic behind breathing, let me know, post a comment, send me a message, or join me in a yoga class because I talk about the breath a ton in yoga. Tomorrow, Thursday, I have chair yoga at noon. Saturday is slow flow at noon. And then Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. is stretch and de-stress. And that is also big focus on breathing to relax the mind and the body. So I hope to see you very soon on the mat. Thanks. Bye.